Hey, Milestone Church, thanks for joining me tonight, and it's March the 10th, it's Wednesday night, and I don't know about you, but today was an awesome day. It was absolutely beautiful out. I was doing some reading out in my backyard a little bit of a book I was going through, and did some walking around as well today, and just what a gorgeous day, and tomorrow's supposed to be beautiful as well, and I think it just feels extra nice because it's been cold for a while, and this is the first kind of break into spring that I feel today and tomorrow as well. And I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that it brightened up your day, brightened up your mood. It seems like as I talked to different people and saw people, they just seem more cheerful, more happy. And it seems like bright, sunshiny days brings that out in a lot of us. I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about being in a good mood. And I want to go to 1 Peter chapter 4. That's where we're studying on Sundays. And often I go through a text, and I don't have enough time to really do the whole text. And so I thought, well, tonight I'm going to give you the introduction for my message on Sunday. This is a text I'm not going to really dive into that much, but if I could dive into a little bit more, this is what I would say. And really, Peter is just kind of talking about having a good mood. Being in a good mood, and maybe not quite that simple, but it really does feel that way. It's just 1 Peter chapter 4, and when are you supposed to be in a good mood? He says, "Beloved, do not be surprised at fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But," he says, "rejoice," or in other words, be in a good mood. Be in a good mood. Rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. And here's what he's very simply saying. Hey, don't be surprised when you have a fiery trial, when you have a difficult exam that comes your way, when things kind of press in and things don't go the way that you planned, and someone's picking on you or upset with you or whatever for you following Jesus Christ. And it says don't be surprised and make sure that when that happens, just stay in a good mood. It's a bright, sunshiny day when these things happen. Is that how you feel when things go wrong, when you have a really rough day? Let me give you an example. John chapter 9, of a guy that was, really his life was not that great. And the disciples are talking with Jesus about that. When you look at different people that are out begging for food or out struggling in very simple ways, and they have a cardboard sign that says, help, need food, or need money for family, or whatever it is, we have a certain perspective on them. And I don't know about you. There's some people that you kind of walk by and ignore. There's others that some people will hand things out to or whatever, and you'll just kind of do what you feel is best to do in those moments. Well, here's a guy in John chapter 9. John is writing this out as he kind of sees it, and he's writing it out for us. And they're going by, in the disciples, and as they pass by, this blind person from birth. So they're well aware of this person who's been blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi," Jesus, teacher, "who sinned, this man or his parents?" And what they're referring to is the common thought is, if you have something bad happen to you, then you must have sin in your life. And if you're blind from birth, then you must be really a sinful person, or your parents did some really bad things. And so there's this idea that if you have something bad go on, God's sitting there waiting to throw a bunch of garbage your way so that you have a miserable life. And that was the whole idea behind it. That was their religious leaders' thoughts, and that's how they talked about God. And so the disciples are saying, okay, so Jesus, clarify this. Why is this guy blind? Is it because of his sin or his parents? Well, Jesus answers, it was not that this man sinned or his parents. So he clarifies really quick. It's not about sin. And in a couple other texts, Jesus clarifies similar things as well and refers back to difficult days, difficult circumstances, bad things happening, is not always related to sin. I would look at sin and say sin has its natural consequence, and God allows for that to happen in our life for the purpose of bringing us back to him. And so that's a whole nother conversation. So he says this, it's not that this man sinned or his parents, but that. Interesting little conjunction there, but that. It's so that, and here's the reason, God has a purpose for this hard thing that's going on in his life, the blindness that this man has, and it's from the point of birth, and he's an adult. This whole thing has a purpose behind it, and he says this, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. And so Jesus is saying, listen, you think, the school of thought is that it's because of sin or his parents' sin, but it has nothing to do with that. The reason, there is a reason, and the reason is so that we can see the work of God. Now, if I look at the work of God, I'm going to look at the eyeball and say the eyeball is this magnificent work of God. If I look at the work of God, I'm going to see the human body and say it's magnificent, the human body and the brain and the capacity of a brain to be able to make choices and do all kinds of things. I'm going to see the work of God. And he's saying this blindness, the lack of being able to see, is actually a work of God that's about to be displayed. And so here's what he does. And this is cool. So, by the way, comfort. If you're going through a hard time, and you think everything's bad, there's a but that in your life. God has a plan, and he's going to work something out for his glory. Now, so here's what Jesus does, and this is cool. I'm just going to kind of talk through the rest of the chapter. You can read through and get all the different points, but just to kind of highlight, Jesus does this. He gets down in verse 6 and go and further. He goes down and takes and he spits into the dirt, pushes his spit together into the dirt and makes mud, and goes up to this guy and puts the mud, this little concoction, spit and dirt and mud, on this guy's eyes. And he didn't ask for permission, like, obviously. Hey, do you mind if and the guy couldn't see him. He's blind, so he has no idea. He's like, hey, what's wet on my eyes? Whatever. And so he goes and puts this on his eyes, and he says to him, he says, go down to the pool of Siloam and wash. Now, time out. How's he going to get there? He's blind, right? Does he know where it's at? Can he follow his GPS? No. And here's, I think, John foreshadowing a little bit and saying this, that the just shall live by faith, that we walk by faith and not by sight. That this blind man is walking by faith because Jesus said, go down and wash. He's walking by faith because he knows there's something about going there to wash. And so he goes and he does this, and he comes back healed. So he can see coming back then. And as he comes back, the neighbors and those who had seen him, they're questioning, saying, yo, what's up with this? He can see. This is the guy, same guy that was over here begging. He can see now. What's going on? And they're questioning him. And they're saying, it's not that guy. And he's sitting there. It's like he's shouting. And he says, no, I am that man. I'm healed. I'm totally different now. I was blind. Now I can see. Well, then they bring him to the Pharisees because they're concerned about the Pharisees and what they would think, because this thing happened on the Sabbath, and this is totally against their religious way of thinking, that you couldn't do this kind of work on the Sabbath day. And so they made up all these rules, and Jesus didn't follow their rules, although he was following God's rules. And they kind of interjected their rules into God's rules, and anyway. So they begin to question and can confront him about this and saying, okay, who did this? And the guy has this blind man is having this brilliant conversation with the Pharisees where he's saying, listen, here's what happened. He put mud on my eyes. I know what it was. He doesn't say he spit in the ground and he said, he just put mud on my eyes. I went down and washed, and then I could see. That's how the story goes. And they say, well, who is he? He said, and it's almost like he's got to say to him, guys, I was blind. I didn't see him. Hello, and they weren't getting it. And then they were having this conversation in between them saying that only a sinless person could do this kind of an action. And then the other person says, the other Pharisee was saying, yeah, but it was on the Sabbath, so he's obviously not sinless. And there's this big argument going on between them. And then they go to the blind man and say, what do you think? This brilliant blind man says back to him, I think he's a prophet. And so they go down further and they begin to question his parents. And the parents, they don't want to get involved. And they say, listen, he's old enough, just ask him. Because they didn't want to get in trouble with the Pharisees. And then the Pharisees go back and they ask him again, and they say, hey, listen, tell us about this again, how this go. And he responds back and he says, guys, you already asked me. What do you want to know? You really don't want to know. Here's the deal. I was blind, now I can see. That's all that mattered to him. I was blind, now I can see. And he says to them, and this is verse 26, and they said to him, what did he do to you? How do you open your eyes? And he answered, I've already told you. And then he says, why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciple? Oh, what a poignant question he's asking. And as this unfolds, they kick him out of the temple. So he's there, that's where he's begging. Now he's out, he's not allowed back in. Jesus goes and finds him and talks to him about faith. And he then goes and places his faith in Jesus Christ and falls down and worships Jesus. Now, what's my point? It had to be a confusing afternoon for this guy who's blind. Now he can see, but now he's ousted from the temple, the place he's always dwelt. He goes from it just being a normal day where people feel bad for him to a day where people are polarized against him. He's going through suffering. He's going through a hardship, and Jesus as well is suffering. And you'll see this playing out over these next few chapters in the Gospel of John. And here's my point. It had to be confusing to go from a blind beggar to a person who is healed and proclaiming Jesus to a person who's ousted and then introduces him, gets introduced to Jesus for real and worships him. It had to be just such a roller coaster of a day. Rejoice. Be in a good mood. Regardless of what's happening in your life, there's reason for a good mood. And Jesus is really leading him to a point where he can then follow after Jesus fully and completely. And here's where I want to head here with us for today. My point is, on a sunny day, we look and we rejoice because of the circumstance of the sun. On a dark day, we say, well, it's dark and gloomy. And I'll say, wait a second. Rejoice, it's always a sunny day when God's in charge, because he can take our blindness, turn it into sight. He can take us in a rough place, and he can take us and just open us up to all kinds of new and exciting things in just a simple day. So rejoice, knowing this, that God is up to something big. That something big with that man was something bigger than any person could do. The Pharisees knew it. This blind man knew it. Everybody knew it had to be bigger than any person. He turned this blindness into sight. And God is up to something big in all of our lives as well. So the question is, will we rejoice and stay in a good mood, knowing that he's the light and he's doing something great in us? Well, maybe I was a little bit lengthy today going through this, but I just wanted to kind of capture this text a little bit and share it with you and encourage you with that while it's a sunny, great day, stay encouraged, stay in a good mood, but make sure that when tough times come, look to Jesus and stay in a good mood because he's up to something big. Hey, have a great night. Look forward to seeing you on Sunday. Don't forget, I believe our time changes on Saturday night, so make sure you show up on time for church on Sunday at 11 o'clock, and look forward to hanging out with you then. Hey, take care. I'll see you.